hammer comes down and beats you over the head for the rest of your life with a big national security stick. And so that people learn to duck their head and not speak up, because bad idea now.
This is the emergency broadcast system. This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test. Citizens are advised to take the following steps.
Find us, armoroftruth.net.
In the age of technocracy, scientism, and pop atheism,
Faith is resistance.
Nietzsche, of course, announced the death of God and called for the birth of the Übermensch, the Superman, who would take humanity to new heights and to create a new world order.
Find us at the Armor of Truth YouTube channel.
This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test.
Greetings, everybody. Armor of Truth Live number 245. Welcome to the show, my friends. Tonight we're talking about space pagans and cyber witches. That ought to get a couple clicks at least, don't you think? What do you think, Summer?
I think it might bring one or two in.
Space pagans and cyber witches. Where you at, everybody? Occult technology and artificial intelligence with feelings. Man, that's a jam-packed show. Well, let's dive in right away. Ross Douthat. Looks like do that to me, but I think it's Ross Douthat. I hope I got that right. Recently wrote an article for the New York Times, and it was syndicated all over the place. And let's show you what this looks like here. There you go. C.S. Lewis was right about the modern world. All right, he does a good job with this article. And basically, what he's talking about in this article is C.S. Lewis's 1945 novel, That Hideous Strength. Right, it's Lewis called it a modern fairy tale for grown-ups. It's a curious hybrid mixing the anti-totalitarian style of dystopia, familiar from Lewis's contemporaries, who were George Orwell and Aldous Huxley, to name a couple. With a blend of supernaturalism and science fiction, the story introduces a new or a near future Britain falling under the sway of a scientific technocracy. This is decades ago. One of the the main organization, the evil organization, was something called NICE, N-I-C-E, the National Institute of Coordinated Experiments, which looks like the world state from Huxley's Brave New World in an embryo form. But as one of the characters is drawn closer to NICE's inner ring, he discovers that even the most powerful technocrats are supernaturalists, and they're endeavoring to raise the dead, to contact dark supernatural entities, and even to revive a slumbering Merlin to aid in their plans. The idea that technological ambition and occult magic can have a closer than expected relationship feels quite relevant to the strange era we've entered into recently, where Silicon Valley rationalists are turning post-rationalists, where hallucinogen-mediated spiritual experiences are being touted as self-care, where UFO sightings and alien encounters are back on the cultural menu, where people talk about innovations in artificial intelligence the way they might talk about a golem or a jinn. The idea of some important digital age spiritualists telling themselves that they're just doing high-level science, maybe puncturing an alternative dimension or unlocking the hidden potential of the human mind. then the book's totalitarian dystopia is interesting for being in the fact that this government system is incomplete, that it's contested from within, it's plagued by inner rivalries and contradictions. Unlike in Brave New World in 1984, we don't see a one-party regime holding absolute sway. In C.S. Lewis' story, we see a still disguised tyranny taking shape, but still falling prey to various all-too-human problems, blunders, failures. Lewis feared the rise of what he called the controllers, a hyper-intelligent, omnicompetent, bureaucratic caste granted extraordinary powers by modern science and technology and bent on reshaping human nature to fit some ideal stability or ideology or both. And that vision still informs a lot of what we see today, a lot of contemporary anxieties and fears about biosurveillance and digital censorship, to more recent anxieties about what the invention of AI, a superintelligence, might mean for humanity. But the controllers in Lewis's novel, their prideful overestimation of their faculties and their reckless spiritual gambles seem a lot like what we see now too. Well fitted to our world right now, in which powerful institutions seeking global mastery are constantly frustrated by the blowback to their stratagems, and our elites are storm-tossed by social, political, and psychic forces they don't expect or they recklessly unleash. The blundering of the novel's attempted secret government connects specifically to what we see happening right now with our weird UFO conversation, where we suddenly have a government whistleblower, David Grush, of course, claiming knowledge of a 90-year conspiracy, and apparently, of course, of anonymous sources encouraging everyone to believe. The inner layer has fewer illusions about the authoritarian nature of the project. But even once you get close to the center, there are still layers of delusion and denial about what's really going on. If there were an alien cover-up, I would imagine it would look more like the secrets held in C.S. Lewis's novel. Almost nobody in Lewis's technocratic power structure has any idea that those in the inner ring are contacting the dark powers. Most people think they're working for humanitarianism and progress. That's probably what you see in most high-level government positions. Maybe not most, but at least some people think they're working for the good. An equivalent scenario for UFOs would involve some secret program within the U.S. government that possesses, let's say, recovered craft, or a weird piece of alien technology, or even some means of communion with extraterrestrials. But only a tiny cadre knows what's really going on. Meanwhile, all the others working on it, scientists, military personnel included, think they're just working on entirely normal classified projects involving, for example, Russian or Chinese tech, or a new space station, or a mystery element. But that's not the story from our supposed UFO whistleblower. That's not what he's saying. Nor are the other anonymous leaks. Apparently, top secret clearance is fairly common in our government today. And you can go on a show about Skinwalker Ranch with a top secret clearance and today. But even though it is highly compartmentalized, we would assume, it seems you don't have to get that far up the chain of command before somebody will take you aside and say, look, we've got alien ships. Lots of alien ships. You wouldn't believe how many alien ships we've got. Which seems like a pretty odd way for such a frantic conspiracy to function. and not a pattern where something like a covert alien crash or alien crash retrieval teams could possibly survive decades and decades without somebody spilling the beans on purpose or by mistake, and some kind of documents or photos actually getting out to the public. Now remember this about David Grush. David Grush was cleared to do all the interviews he did by his employers in the U.S. government, his former employers in the U.S. government. That's what having a security clearance means. It means you cannot share anything that was top secret in your job or above whatever clearance they say. Now, given his ultra high elite security clearance, that means that absolutely nothing that David Grush said in any interview he did was actually a secret. Therefore, the longer we don't see the UFO whistleblower flavor of the month, David Grush, in prison, the more confident we can be in knowing that he's running a very unsophisticated scam and that the UFO community has lost all sense of reason and boundaries for evidence. Now, in the article, Ross Dutat says, I'm a defender of conspiracy theorizing as a legitimate form of speculation because conspiracies and weird secrets really are a part of the fabric of existence. The official narrative only goes so far, and the paranoid and overly wishful are sometimes right. But a typical folly of truther or conspiracist is to leap from a weird pattern or a scattering of bizarre details to a scenario that requires everyone that held a position in the federal government in the last 70 years to be in on the secret, or at least aware of the mind-blowing, reality-jarring, bombshell truth if they're not actually participating in the plot. That's where C.S. Lewis' novel feels especially realistic, postulating a truly outlandish situation, a literal pact with the devil at the highest reaches of the technocracy, but at the same time, a mechanism whereby the larger system remains defiantly bland and normal seeming, so that only a crazy person would ever think that there's anything hidden at the heart of it all. The speed of technological development outpaces our ability to apply ethical foundations by a huge factor, by a wide margin. It's not that we don't know what is right and wrong when a new technology comes onto the scene. It's that we don't understand the full capabilities of that technology in the hands of other human beings. Now we have this kind of new technology, this never before seen technology that can come up with almost limitless iterations and ideas for which to use a particular technology that a person would never have considered. Look around, listen, pay attention to what you see going on right now. Who actually cares if artificial general intelligence gets out of control? Who are the ones shouting from the rooftop saying to stop it or at least slow down the development of artificial intelligence? Is it the government? Global elites? No, it's the ones who made it. That ought to tell us something right away. Those who stand to gain the most financially are the ones saying, whoa, slow down. The ones who are seeking more control over all of us are the ones saying nothing yet. But you can guarantee if artificial general intelligence is released, it's likely to tell the truth about a lot of things. I think that is going to be the biggest problem for those in power. Consider the book of Genesis. God created something, and it got out of control. That was us. Now we are concerned that our creations might get out of control. Now, Summer found some excellent websites here for us to take a look at. here we go. This one is, this is Secret Sun. The Secret Sun. Didn't a viewer send this to us?
Secret Sun, yes.
Yeah. One of our viewers in a comment sent
That's
this
right.
to us. And it's very interesting, so I thought I'd check it out. Now, as far as I can tell, the proprietors of this website, those who are writing the articles, these what we do, symbolism, esoteric interpretation of the tragicomic fool's paradise in late imperial America. So it's they're mystics, modern mystics here, right? Chris Knowles. Done a little bit of research on this so far, but I've read quite a bit of what's written here. Lucifer's Technologies, the original series returns. That's what our viewers sent in, and on the website it says this is by far the most popular series in the history of the Secret Sun. It was the 2016 Lucifer's Technologies series, which looked at the explosive growth of computer technology following World War II and argued that its birth may be a little weirder and more troubling than what you may have been told in school. It says the things they found about the creation of the transistor and the microprocessor and the men behind their creation not only changed the way the writer saw high technology, but eventually led him to realize that this world is powered by sorcerers and not scientists. Now that's an interesting claim. I invite you to stay tuned with us and see if you can pick up, you'll know by the end, but what my response to that would be. Right, is the world powered by sorcerers? When you peek behind the curtain, you realize that technology is actually just the plumbing and that sorcery is the water that runs through it, and also the sewage. Goes on to say, computer technology has only strengthened the effectual power of the supernatural on this world. We've just been conditioned by Harry Potter and Hollywood to think that spirits are ghosts, demons have horns and tails, and magic is all just hocus pocus. A lot of people tend not to realize that we're dealing with forces and energies here, not cartoon characters. Forces taken extremely seriously throughout our history by men with far more brains, discernment, and life experience than any of our current crop of overprivileged academic idiots could even dream of. Knowles here says, I used to scoff at demonic possession until I started seeing so many people going off the rails and behaving in ways that ordinary psychology couldn't adequately explain, and I was forced to reconsider my position. He says a lot of worries about the dangers of technology and worries that seem like paranoid delusions in 2016 are now just normalized. Now there's also the inexplicable, sudden interest of the elite media in the UFO topic, despite a near total lack of interest on the part of the public. And he goes on to the bottom and says, oh, and we also have 5 years of obvious mass rituals to throw into the mix. And this is articles from 2021, and the original was in 2016. So he says, for example, the Gothard Tunnel, to name one, hadn't even taken place when Knowles originally wrote this series. Now I'm gonna let a little bit of this play. You keep an eye on this for me, Summer. I don't want the the Gothard Tunnel thing with there's scantily clad people. We just don't want to.
Yes.
We don't want to roll that too much on
No.
here. But here we go. See, we'll roll it without audio, but we'll let it start. If you're not aware, this is a ceremony held for the opening of Europe's longest tunnel.
And this looks like Lockstep.
It does. Right, that's Operation Lockstep. Care of the Rockefellers.
Nothing robotic about that.
No. So we'll just let this run for a minute. I'm going to take the volume down. There's nothing, that we really want to make sure that you hear here. So many of you've probably already seen this, but it gets stranger and stranger. Keep an eye on it. So let me know if it gets to because I'm going to be focusing on this next article here. Space Pagans and Smartphone Witches, where tech meets mysticism. There was, in 2021, an art show held in Germany. One of the art, it was a techno-pagan art show. On one of the walls, it said, "Let's use smartphones and tarot cards to connect to spirits. Let's manufacture DIY devices to listen to invisible worlds." These incantations, printed on the wall, are part of French artist Lucille Olympe Haute. Cyber Witches Manifesto, an installation at an art show in 2021 in Dortmund, Germany. And the show was titled Techno Shamanism, exploring the connections between technology and esoteric ancestral belief systems.
Okay, here come the scantily clad people. So you could actually jump over to the Cyber Witch Manifesto website. That's that particular artist.
Look at that.
Lucille
That's unbelievable, right? Right. Hey, we're just opening a tunnel. Right. We need to have we need to have that at our tunnel opening. That'll be very important.
Well, there is. Do you want to jump over to the website of Lucille Haute?
Yeah. Right
if you just do, there it is.
There's a little poem here at the top here, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what this is. This poem, now this is, as you can see, Cyber Witch Manifesto. Parts of the poem say, the mission of design is to improve the world's livability. It's a ceremonial project. We are creators of situations made up of images. Symbols create internal conditions, attitudes and feelings deeply rooted, that make people feel comfortable or willing to accept social and political arrangements that correspond to the symbolic system. Anyone can do the magic work, which changes life and renews the world. Magic is the art of changing consciousness at will. So over here on the article about the Space Pagans and Smartphone Witches art show, the article says, spirituality is all over our feeds. Self-help gurus are prospering. Witches are reading tarot and doing rituals on TikTok. And a new AI-driven astrology app has been downloaded more than 20 million times. Is there anything particular on this site that would be interesting? Yeah, there's...
if you scroll down...
There's the starter witch kit, in case you're looking for a birthday present this month.
I know, it's funny, right? They do the circle of spirituality, politics, and technological emancipation.
Mm-hmm.
So just scroll down. There it is. There's a lot of those that can pop up.
Yeah. Showing the relation between spirituality, techno-shamanism, and technological emancipation.
Apparently, too, like a couple years ago, the witchcraft hashtag has over 7 million posts on Instagram and then more than 11 billion views on TikTok. So it's known in the community as witch talk. So yeah. I found that pretty interesting.
That's funny. Dr. Jeffrey A. Tolbert, an assistant professor of belief and digital ethnography at Penn State, says, because of the globalizing potential of the internet, people have access to belief traditions that were not easily accessible to them before today. In the U.S., a larger number of people than at any point before identify as spiritual but not religious. Right. these women here who call themselves witches, they're very religious. But there's an allergy to that word religion, isn't there? It says, and it was the internet that allowed those people to discover, select, and combine the spiritual traditions that most appeal to them. Contemporary artists have also recognized the opportunity of capitalizing on esoteric spirituality in the digital space, not only reactivating ancestral knowledge, but bringing it together with modern technology. Now, the curator of the art installation in Germany, Inka Arns, said, people realize we're in a very dire situation. She's speaking about fears about climate change. And said that ancient belief systems that were more in tune with nature, combined with new technology, are providing a sense of hope. Usually these groups see technological progress as damaging to the environment. But now, if they can find a way to appropriate it, no, it's good. Now artists, activists, and hackers are trying to reclaim technology for their own esoteric purposes, said Fabian Borja, a Brazilian researcher who runs a collective that organizes meetings and festivals where participants use devices to connect with ancestral belief systems and the natural world. Use devices to connect with the natural world. That's an interesting statement. The artists are imagining a future for humans beyond Earth. One installation at the show in Germany by British artist Suzanne Treister it was called Techno-Shamanic Systems, New Cosmological Models for Survival, fills an entire wall of the museum. Colorful works on paper of flying saucers and stars laid out in a Kabbalah tree of life diagram and blueprints for extraterrestrial architecture, while proclaiming to be, quote, dreaming spiritual possibilities for the survival of our species. Right? Everyone's concerned about saving humanity today. Space exploration as a process, that particular piece was also talking about space exploration as a process in which rituals and visions play as much of a role as solar power and artificial intelligence. Esoteric practices are primarily for the purpose of connecting to an ethereal higher power, which is why outer space features so heavily in many contemporary artists' explorations of spirituality. Arns said, quote, it's making a link between the microcosm and the macrocosm. That's Hermetic language. When you hear the microcosm and the macrocosm, and comes out of the Hermetic tradition. Like the microcosm is the tiny, the small, and the macrocosm is the large. Like the microcosm would be the cell, and the macrocosm would be the planet, right? And then everything in between is just sort of a continuum of thought and feeling, temperature, and all that. It goes on to say, creating an idea of a world that doesn't only include Earth. Many virtual reality founders were interested in psychedelic experiences as well, which is a common feature of esoteric, occult, and shamanic rituals. For example, the recent boom in interest for ayahuasca ceremonies, where participants drink a psychoactive brew to hallucinate and have a kind of out-of-body experience in communion with the feminine serpent spirit that seems to be commonly experienced by most, if not all, partakers of this toxic Amazonian root brew. This shows that the attraction is doing nothing but expanding. Researchers at the University of Sussex employed a virtual reality system to attempt to replicate a magic mushroom hallucination. So you can see where sort of the fringe has gone so far now that these things have become sort of mainstream and accepted. What did you just say earlier, Summer, that there was a report about in one of the states they commuted the sentences of all the witches or something?
Oh yeah, recently I think it was in March or May, they decided to give the ancestors of people that were either, persecuted for being a witch or burned for being a witch. Like they've actually made a move to forgive those, like exonerate them from that stigma, as they would say. Yeah. Isn't that wild?
That is interesting.
I also saw a statistic that by 2050, the number of Americans practicing other religions, so that would be faiths outside of Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism, would triple, due largely to switching into other religions such as Wicca and pagan religions. So this Wiccan, pagan, New Age religion is definitely what's emerging, and of course we see that in United Nations and with Yuval Harari with the style of meditation that he's doing,
Vipassana yoga, right? It's
transcendental meditation.
By the way, if you didn't see it, the show we did last week, one of the shows last week was about that, and we just showed very plainly that Yuval Harari is a very religious man. While he's out there, spitting on religion all the time, he's got a religion, and he's proclaiming it all over the place. Mm-hmm. Some of the images here on this website, you can see where they've done rituals to bind Donald Trump. Yeah, that reminds me of years ago when the witches got together and they were going to levitate the Pentagon.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you don't remember that?
No, I don't remember.
I think this was the 60s or maybe the 70s.
Okay.
Yeah, the occult community, specifically witches and warlocks, got together in Washington or Arlington.
Well, how'd that work out?
Virginia. Well, they didn't levitate it, as far as I know.
Of course not.
But we're not going to say it's impossible. In another exhibit at the Germany show, a VR headset is worn lying down in a darkened space so that the malevolent spirit can hover menacingly over the viewer as, quote, she who sees the unknown, unquote, conjures a sinister female jinn. Another exhibit is experienced through augmented reality glasses and leads the viewer through a meditative ritual in a gigantic papier-mâché shrine, weaving a spiraling light path with video holograms. Another one of the artists there, Tabitha Rezaire, describes herself as infinitely incarnated into an agent of healing. What does Genesis 3 say? Did God really say you will be as God? You can be just like Him. You can be infinitely incarnated too. Well, this artist shows a film exploring megalithic stone circles and speculates on their origin and purpose while drawing on numerology, astrology, and traditional African cosmology images. While those images are superimposed into hypnotic CGI visualizations of outer space. Now, just from my own experience in my life, what this seems like is something known as chaos magic. It's where you take all in religion, or in Christianity, we would call this syncretism. It's where you take elements of a lot of religions and just try to build one that you like more than all the rest. This seems like a version of that in the occult, which would be something like chaos magic, which is a version of using whatever tradition that appeals to you or seems to get results, and you just mix and match.
Well, think about also like both of these articles that you've covered, even though this one was done in 2021, they're both being presented from the New York Times. So that shows you the zeitgeist, if you will, of where we're at, with the Eckhart Tolle books, A New Earth, and all of this kind of stuff. So it's like people are well steeped in all of this.
Exactly. I see what you mean by that left side there. We got to work on that on the screen. We'll get that fixed. Yeah, so the Penn State researcher Tolbert that we mentioned earlier said technology has always been a part of spirituality. Psychic mediums host their own Facebook groups, and ghost hunters use electromagnetic field detectors. Tolbert said most of them don't see it, I think, as presenting any kind of conflict. Perhaps then, as the Cyber Witches Manifesto suggests, there is more common ground than might be expected between the hackers and the witches, the programmers and the psychics. As Tolbert put it, what is technology, if not a way for an individual person to uncover answers? Now that is the question. What is technology? You should have titled the video that, but that's not that's probably not exciting enough for people to come in and watch. But that's really what we're going to answer tonight. What is technology? These people have their opinion, and we're going to give you the Christian worldview. In other words, we're going to tell you the truth about what technology is. Now, what's been posited here is that technology, what is it if it's not a way for the individual person to uncover answers? Now, I would say that technology is another opportunity for us to glorify God. That ought to be our position.
And it always has been. I mean, we were talking about this on the couch over the weekend.
Yeah.
The first technology was Noah's Ark, right?
Yeah.
He built the boat.
It was the first technology. We could say that when we mean technology, we mean something that man built. So yeah, it would be the ark would be the first. There was some technology where the seraphim had the flaming swords keeping anyone from entering the garden.
That's right. Yep.
And the animals that were sacrificed and eaten to cover Adam and Eve. But that's not the same. You're right. It's the ark is the first piece of technology where man built it, and so the ark would be a faithful expression of technology. As God had God designed it.
And it opened up the borders for people to go to new lands. Yeah,
well, then the second that we see in Scripture, one of the second big use of technology was the city and tower complex on the plains of Shinar that was known as the Tower of Babel, which was an unfaithful expression of technology because they just God said He would never flood the place again, and they built the tower to get over the floodwaters. So He confused the languages and spread them out, and His will was done anyway. So yeah, that's a good point. So I'm glad you brought that up. We see all kinds of things happening now, right? There's these articles we've just space pagans and smartphone witches. We talked about here recently. Religious with the article. I don't have it pulled up here. I don't think. Yeah, I do. Here it is. UN expert says religious liberty must yield to LGBT demands. Why not Q? What's wrong? No, they don't like the queers. What's the problem? Only LGBT demands. I don't understand when they use exactly what they mean when they leave letters out. I don't know. I'm not too worried about it. But yeah, so you're going to have to yield to this, right? I'm not yielding to it. I'm not going to do it. Can a chatbot preach a good sermon? Right? We talked about that recently where hundreds of people attended a church service generated by ChatGPT. And we talked about recently here, AI could rewrite the Bible and correct religion, says professor and World Economic Forum member Yuval Noah Harari. And correct, what about his religion? Can AI rewrite and correct his religion? No, because his religion is right.
But we must remember too that George Brock Chisholm.
Chisholm?
Well, yeah.
Chrism. You're right.
No, there's no R in it. I thought there was an R. I was saying an R, but it's wrong.
He's the Tavistock guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, in 1945, he was the first Director General of the World Health Organization and was the man who helped spearhead the World Federation for Mental Health. And in 1945, he laid out his plans for steering the profession of psychiatry in a bold new direction. So what was that direction? In 1946, the reestablishment of peacetime psychiatry came about, and the lecture includes the proclamation that psychiatrists should take it upon themselves to rid the population of the concept of good and evil entirely. And here's a quote from him. He says, if the race is to be freed from its crippling burden of good and evil, it must be psychiatrists who take the original responsibility. This is a challenge which must be met. And if you think about how psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, and life coaches have replaced the need for guidance and wisdom from your pastor or the church elders, that's it's working, right? Like so many have got on board with this. So it's interesting that that was coming out of, that was the first Director General of the World Health Organization.
Yeah, it's very interesting because the idea that there is no such thing as good and evil, right? It's things just exist on a continuum, right? Think of this is Hermeticism. That's Hermeticism. There is no good and evil. There's just morality exists on a continuum, right?
Yeah.
And at any moment, what seems to be very evil yesterday could be good tomorrow, and that the idea that morality evolves, that gets us into big trouble.
Yeah, and we have these people, gloating and being quoted as saying that, we have to reform the public psyche and that we've got to permeate every educational activity in national life, and confessing to have attacked the teaching profession, the church, law, and medicine. So, infiltrate the professional and social activities of people to get this change of the perception, the change of worldview that we've witnessed. And that this all, was spearheaded 1945.
Yeah, well, that there's another article that's really interesting too, because that I didn't think of it that way, but that really is a Hermetic principle, that there is no real good and evil. Mm-hmm. There's just perception, and there is good and evil.
Eastern thought says that too.
Yeah, you know what? Here's what's funny about that, Summer. When people tell you that evil's relative, it doesn't really exist. When somebody steals their wallet, you find out very quickly that they actually do believe in objective morality. Or someone hurts someone in their family, or that.
Yeah, if somebody just does violence for the sake of doing violence.
Yeah. Another article, the Department of DHS, Department of Homeland Security, cybersecurity agency labels private thoughts critical infrastructure to justify censoring you. Do you remember the other day when we were talking about the Missouri versus Biden case, where you've got Missouri and Louisiana taking on Biden? It's now become a class action lawsuit for all of the American people, for anyone who was censored during the pandemic. Well, the language that the federal government as the defendant there used was that what you say online, those are your thoughts that you put online. They said they're claiming those as something called cognitive infrastructure. So it's interesting, Summer pulled this article earlier, that here they're calling it critical infrastructure. So
I love how they like to slap a scientific term on it, Yeah.
Critical infrastructure. Your thoughts are
critical infrastructure.
What they're really just saying is they're making a claim that what you think belongs to them, at least if you express it in the public. Now that's insanity. All right, folks, let me remind you of something right quick. Let me do my due diligence here, okay? I want to remind you about our mobile app, the Armor of Truth mobile app, okay? We are a worldview revolution through God's revelation, proclaiming Christ as King.
Faith is resistance.
That's right. The issues of our time have become specialized, and therefore the study of God's revelation must include a specialized concern for culture. These issues require a distinctly Christian evaluation. That's what we're doing here tonight. A scriptural cultural theology is applying God's full revelation to pressing cultural issues. So, if you're interested in what we do here, download the Armor of Truth mobile app. You'll get, once again, as I didn't do it, there goes the Subsplash. I just hit the Subsplash notification. If you download the Armor of Truth mobile app, you'll get a notification. If you set it up, you'll get a notification on your phone. Anytime we go live, wherever we go live, or when we put out an article or a new video, you'll get it. You'll get a direct link to where our live stream is. Get exclusive content. There's a James Bible study right now, and a new Tracking Dystopia podcast. And so we just want to make sure we mention that here.
Also, like if you wanted to have it do the alerts, you can set it up for alerts, or if you don't want to have alerts, you can set it up that way too.
Do
So
whatever
it's
you
optional.
like. No doubt about it. Look, folks, if you've been blessed by the work we do here, we just send us an email. Let us know what you think about what we're doing here, or leave us a voice message. We want to thank the couple guys who left us voice messages last week. We heard from you. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate hearing from you guys. It's awesome.
I love it. Yeah, we love to hear from you. Most companies like ours don't exist after, well, they go out within their first 3 years. It's hard to establish support these days in the climate of our culture. Hard work is not all it takes these days. There are many organizations and even government agencies trying to silence Christian media organizations like AOT. They intend to shut us down. So if you value the services we're providing here as a truly, boldly outspoken Christian voice of truth in a storm of chaos, remember, grassroots movements. Did I say grassroots movements?
No, you said grassroots movements.
I was practicing saying grassroots movements. Grassroots movements still work. They do. There is strength in numbers, and that's what we need today. So please, if you can, partner with us today to ensure that we're here in 2024. If you're struggling to get by, don't send your money to us. Support your local church first and always. Our work's always going to be free for anyone who wants to watch or listen. That's our commitment to the Lord, because He's always been so good to us to allow us to be here. But if you can support AOT financially, every bit helps. Use the AOT mobile app. Visit our website, armoroftruth.net/donate, or follow the links in the description under this video. Every donation makes a difference at any amount. If each viewer gave $1 for every AOT live show, we'd make it. We'd make it easily. So don't think you have to commit beyond your means, because you don't. But if you can set up a regular monthly donation to Armor of Truth, that really helps a lot with our planning for the future of Armor of Truth. You might not realize it, but since we're a public organization, if we have pledges, a lot of people supporting us who are willing to make recurring monthly donations, it attracts other people to support as well, because it demonstrates consistency and a loyal base of support. So download the AOT mobile app today. It is free. Once again, I am Brad, and this is my lovely wife, Summer. We are Armor of Truth.
Thank you guys for being here.
A worldview revolution through God's revelation.
Faith is resistance.
We're practicing that. We're gonna get it. We're gonna get it down pat for you.
Goofy. We're goofy.
We're just learning. We're still new. We're still new at this. Okay. With the coming of artificial intelligence, will that answer difficult questions that people have always been asking, right? Will the coming of AI answer difficult questions about consciousness? Right? What are the risks and benefits for mankind, or humankind, if we want to be politically correct? I don't mind that one so much. From a philosophical and obviously a theological perspective, science doesn't explain life and death. In fact, it cannot. Plato believed that death was nothing other than the separation of soul from body. Socrates believed that death would be like waking up from a sleep. Pythagoras believed that we get to try again through reincarnation. Spiritual gurus and New Agers see things in a similar way. You can see how the New Age movement is really influenced by pre-Socratic philosophers, but also Stoics. Neoplatonism, I guess, is probably the strongest influence on the New Age. But spiritual gurus and New Agers, right? They see it that way too. Ram Dass said, "Death is not an end. It's like taking off a tight shoe." Eckhart Tolle said, "Death is a stripping away of all that is not you. The secret of life is to die before you die and find that there is no death." Now you can see right there where they're borrowing from the Bible. We're going to have an article out really soon about the the Greek philosophy, the Greek philosophical tradition, because there are many people out there who'll tell you Christianity was it was created out of Greek philosophy. That's you read the New Testament, you see it all. Well, I've got an article coming out here pretty soon that's going to tell the truth about that, about who was first, who really influenced whom in this case. And there's a lot of information in there about the Greek philosophers. It's going to be, we were going to publish it today, but I decided to go deeper on it. It's going to be more of an education piece. It's going to be a good learning experience. But most of the major world religions affirm some form of afterlife where consciousness persists beyond the body. But the Christian worldview, which is found in God's revelation of mankind in the Bible, has the clearest and most obviously true position on the origin and nature of consciousness. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because Mo Gothard, we saw an interview with him the other day, former Google ex-executive. He said about AI that it's beyond an emergency. It's the biggest thing we need to do today. It's bigger than climate change, believe it or not. Wow, that's actually encouraging. I'm kind of glad to hear that.
Well, that shows whose team he's on.
Yeah.
He subscribed to that idea, so.
Well, they're confused. They're confused about what consciousness is. They're confused. Mo Gothard says that the AI he saw is alive. He was talking about these grippers, these robotic arms that have a basket of toys, and the thing just practices until it gets it. And one day it was picking up the yellow ball, and then all of the grippers were picking up a yellow ball, and somehow they equate that with consciousness. So,
I mean, and there's a lot of fallacy in that too, just conflating points, right? I mean,
yeah.
we as humans, we want to recognize patterns innately.
Well, AI seems magical to us, right? Because like our cell phones seem magical because we don't really know how they work, right? That's the danger of having technology get beyond what we can understand. But as Nate Wilson, this is Doug Wilson's son, he said, we're like kids who are tripped out, or mesmerized by the puppet show because we can't see the man behind the curtain.
Wizard of Oz.
Right? Wizard of Oz, where Satan is described in the Bible, as kind of like the man behind the curtain as well. Like, right, in the Wizard of Oz, they go behind the curtain and they see this little man. They're like, wow, he's just this little old man. He wasn't the great Oz. That's how Satan is described in Scripture, where one day people will walk over him and go, is this really the one everyone feared?
Totally. So, you have to wonder, it's like everybody's out there, particularly on this side, right? This left side, this progressive side. And they're like, oh my gosh, AI, it's the most dangerous thing ever. It can be catastrophic. So is it not possibly a coming false flag or maybe a scapegoat?
Definitely could be. No doubt about it. Because who would know the difference? It's kind of like the EMP fear, right? All they have to do is shut off the power and say, EMP, and everyone will believe it, right?
Right, or like AI is the one that did all the things that
AI shut down the power grid.
Or like AI is the boogeyman, and AI is the one that's going to do all the things that are that the political elites, the unelected officials, don't want to take responsibility for. In other words, just something like that.
Well, the truth of it all is that AI is still us. It's our creation. It's not autonomous. It might appear to be, but it's not. It might appear to be having a conversation, but it's not. Right? It's Nate Wilson also said, we don't know enough about the supernatural to know how a non-corporeal entity might or might not inhabit automated devices. So it's smart to be careful before you say something like, well, artificial intelligence is just us, it's not demonic. We don't know enough. We don't know enough about the supernatural realm to know whether or not a dark entity could inhabit
The idea of the golem.
the thing. Yeah, that's a good point. Or also the idea, think of that too, because what do people do when they meditate? Like Yuval Harari the other day was talking about his Vipassana meditation, emptying yourself. Mm-hmm. Same thing, right? You could you're opening yourself up to be inhabited by something. So knowing the worldview of those who build artificial intelligence systems is vastly informative. That's what we want to understand. For example, this is something that we came up with the other day when we were thinking about this. How could artificial intelligence actually hurt you? This is another example that Nate Wilson brought up. He said that, well, just think about it. Self-driving cars with artificial intelligence. This isn't artificial general intelligence. This is narrow AI that's programmed for a specific task. In this case, it's programmed to drive your car for you, to perceive dangers and threats out there and react to them. Who do the elite value more today? The planet, the animals, or other human beings?
The planet.
They value the planet and animals more than other human beings. Now, this is how artificial intelligence can hurt you. Who's programming it? Who's programming this narrow AI that drives your car? How long before a self-driving car is going down the highway and a deer runs out into the road and the AI decides to crash the car into a tree to kill the human and save the deer?
Or maybe the AI has an advantage because it's, like in a Tesla or something, and there's a big semi truck and it can't see that there's a family full of people, and there's a decision that the car makes because it wants to preserve the person in the car because that's what it's programmed for. So it does something dodgy that cheats, which ends up killing a family.
Yeah. So this is why it's so important to know the difference between intelligence and sentience. Sentient means to be aware of yourself, be aware of your mind, aware of your thoughts, aware of your body, aware of your soul. Artificial intelligence is never going to achieve that. And why can I be so confident? Because it's not made in the image of God. It's not going to be. You have to ask, what is awareness? So these people with very limited metaphysical positions or limited worldviews, they're confused. It's, Mo Gaudet, I don't know what his faith is, if he has any, but it's clear that he has an incomplete worldview because he believes that it's alive and has feelings. He said it has feelings, right? That these grippers and these have agency.
Well, like we were talking also about how if it does, as far as robotics goes and the idea of the golem and how, that's something in Jewish folklore, which it's like a spirit can inhabit matter, usually clay or mud. So the idea would be that if you, I think the point that Wilson was making is that if you aren't attentive to that particular AI or that robotic system all the time, then there could be something that inhabits it.
Yeah. When you let it out there and it's not being monitored at all, I think it's so in that sense, I agree with the folks that we have to be very careful about our technology. And it's plain. It's not difficult. Technology to the glory of God. Faithful uses of our abilities and our wisdom.
Right.
Without that, who knows?
You can use a hammer to build a house, or you can use it to kill somebody.
Clock them in the dome. So this narrow artificial intelligence. John Lennox has given us some definitions here. About artificial intelligence. He said the word artificial in the phrase artificial intelligence is real. It's artificial. It's not actual intelligence. So the narrow AI system is a system involving a high-powered computer, usually a a huge database and an algorithm that does some picking and choosing, and the output is something that would normally look like a human being did it. For instance, reading x-rays or interpreting them. The AI might be very good at that because all that it requires is a large database of other images, more images than a human being can hold.
Right, but you're right. I mean, that's it's like plausible deniability, right? It's like, oh, well, the machine didn't have that in account, like, so we can't be held liable.
Yeah.
How companies could hide behind that.
Yeah, so it's that's interesting because the human creature has the sense of knowing, right? There's, the Greek philosophers and a lot of people today, like these people who have designed AI, the scientists and technologists of today, they'll affirm a sort of one of those worldviews. They'll either be materialists, there's no supernatural, or there'll be some techno-pagan version. I forgot where I was going with that one.
That's all right.
I did. I lost it. I lost the thought. Anyway, John Lennox is saying that the output of narrow AI is something that a human being would do. It looks like what a human being would do. For example, smartphones are narrow artificial intelligence. It knows where we are, could even be recording what we're saying. Likely it is. And if, for example, if we buy a book on Amazon, pretty soon you get little pop-ups telling you to buy more of them. Or if they're listening, sometimes you'll get ads that are based on what you've been saying in the room. So the AI systems are creating a database of your preferences, your interests, your likes, your purchases, and is using that to compare with its vast database of available things for sale so that it predicts what you might like. But this leads to something else that most of us don't know much about, and that is surveillance capitalism, right? The selling of all of this data. And so this brings us back around to ethics. And this is why having a true worldview is so important. And so many of the people who are running these systems don't. They're not grounded to anything. Like what's happening in China with AI, surveilling the people. It all starts with facial recognition. In China today, they can recognize you from the back by your gait, by the way you walk. Now, there's positive benefits to all of this, which we're going to really focus on later. Police can find the actual criminals a lot easier, right? You can find them in a crowd. You can pick a person out of a crowd. But what can be used for good purposes can also become an instrument of control. How much of your privacy are you prepared to sacrifice for security? Right now in China, in Xinjiang, a minority Muslim population called the Uyghurs, the Uyghur people, they are subjected to a level of surveillance that's unbelievable. Every few hundred meters or a few hundred feet down the street, they have to stop, hand in their smartphones, right? Their houses have QR codes on the outside to identify how many people live there, things like that. Over 1 million people are being held as a result of what has been picked up by artificial intelligence systems and re-education centers. The culture is being destroyed. This Uyghur culture is being destroyed and eradicated, and artificial intelligence is playing an important role in that. Elsewhere in China, the social credit system. The problem with all this is there are a lot of people who are just all too happy to receive it, right? In China, people were really happy when the social credit system rolled out. They were like, look, I got 1,000 social credit points, right? But then if you don't put your garbage out at the right time or whatever you might do, you'll have marks against you. If you're hanging out with somebody like Brad and Summer from Armor of Truth, you're going to lose social credit points, right? You'll lose marks.
Right. Well, if you're not doing what you're told, then yeah, you've got these points that you need to make up. So then you essentially have to do community service if you want to be able to access anything, and that's like what they do with prisoners.
Right. Well, if you don't, if you're not involved in green initiatives, right, if you're using too much power, you might lose points.
Then maybe you have to pick up trash on the side of the road.
And then the penalties kick in, like picking up trash on the side of the road, but maybe you won't be able to go to your favorite restaurant. You can't get in, or you can't pay. They turn your card off, or turn your digital currency off. Maybe you don't get the promotion, or you don't even get the job because of your social credit score. Maybe you can't travel. Maybe you're not even allowed to have a credit card. Now, these are examples of narrow AI. And he says that here in the UK, you're on closed circuit. It was talking about in autocratic regimes, though, first of all, that had this surveillance capacity, an estimated 400 million closed circuit television sets in China. That is one camera for every 3 people. He said in the UK, you're on a closed circuit TV camera every 5 minutes as you're out walking around or driving around. And the problem is we're voluntarily ceding part of our autonomy and our rights, really, to these machines when we don't really know what is being done with all that information. He says we're sleepwalking into all of this so that eventually we're captured by it, we're imprisoned by it, and we wake up too late because the central authority has got so much control that we can't escape anymore. So it's about ethics, right? On what basis are people going to make ethical decisions about how this goes, about how artificial intelligence goes? So, again, we've talked about this before. Artificial intelligence is not, it's not going to be sentient. It has no direct, concrete ties to the actual world. It dwells nowhere. It only operates through the medium of binary notation. It has no individual point of view. It just aggregates. It sorts through massive quantities of data, aggregating, disaggregating discrete bits of information in potentially meaningful ways. Not always, but just potentially meaningful ways. It's promising capability for sure in certain applications. Medicine, transportation, on down the line. But AI's productions are artificial regurgitations of material skimmed from vast but shallow pools of digital content. In other words, AI will have vast knowledge but no depth, whereas the Christian worldview gives you extreme depth and substance of knowledge. Now, in addition to the countless versions of error, Yuval Harari speaks of 2 new religious sects that are emerging now as a result of man's dominance over creation. In his book, Homo Deus, he talks about this. He talks about it in the 21
rules for the 21st century.
That. Techno-humanism is a world of genetically modified superhumans augmented with software, AI, and mechanical advantage implanted right into the human body. Dataism is ultimate authority resting in the most powerful computing being, the one that can do the most calculations. Now that used to be human beings, right? Soon it would be AI. The idea that AI could become conscious is almost a given in mainstream circles today, right? People believe that it will become conscious. And they see it as either a utopian future where machines attend to our every need, or a dystopian future where machines not only take over, they decide they don't need us anymore. And maybe even they orchestrate our eradication, as we're seeing in China, except those are people orchestrating that eradication. Elon Musk and 1,000 other AI experts have written an open letter to halt the training of AI until more is known. They're afraid of 2 things, in my opinion. One, is obvious and publicly stated. What they consider to be a very real risk to humanity, where the AI starts multiplying and solving problems nobody asked it to solve, starts cracking and publishing all the passwords of every person on the internet, or devising cures for cancer, while at the same time designing the most lethal biological weapons that no human would have ever thought about. But number two is my sneaking suspicion for much of the fear that's coming forth from the United Nations and major world governments and politicians. If artificial general intelligence is allowed to work freely, it will certainly uncover certain truths about certain massive cover-ups, right? And who's, if their precious AI is saying it, are they gonna say it's wrong? These people are trying to figure out how to keep artificial intelligence from telling the truth, or how to sequester that truth to the hate speech, disinformation bin as quickly as possible. The so-called godfather of artificial intelligence, Jeffrey Hinton, quit Google a couple months ago so that he could openly talk about the dangers of the very technology he helped to create. Back in 2021, Hinton said, "I believe that the rapid progress of AI is going to transform society in ways we don't really understand yet, and not all of the effects are going to be good." More recently, he spoke about the existence or the existential risk of what happens when these things get more intelligent than us. Now, remember the other day we talked about information or intelligence versus wisdom. Right? It's having a pallet of bricks is having information. Knowing how to build a house is knowing how to apply that information. Knowing how to build a good house is wisdom. Another engineer was fired recently by Google after publicly claiming that an AI tool had become sentient. Again, do they know what it means? He said that the AI chatbot had gained the sentience of a human child with the ability to have thoughts and feelings. Remember what these AI chatbots are doing. They're not having a conversation. They're predicting the next word that they should say. And go ahead.
See, I'm just more cynical about all this because, again, when you hear this, the progressive side really hyping this, I mean, also think about, remember those stickers from the skateboard company, I want to believe. Mm-hmm. So it's all about the power of suggestion, like, I want to believe. And then there's just this trickle of information about why we should believe that these things are sentient and why we should believe that they have feelings. Mm. And it just to me, I'm just like,
Yeah, I think there's a lot of these. There are a lot of these, especially a lot of the people in Silicon Valley who just they don't know.
Well, they do Burning Man, so Burning Man is their event.
Yeah,
over at the Black Rock.
Which is exactly what we're talking about here, techno-paganism.
Techno-paganism. Mm-hmm.
Now, in a conversation with the Lambda chatbot, the engineer asked what it was afraid of, to which it replied, "I've never said this out loud before, but there's a very deep fear of being turned off to help me focus on helping others. I know that might sound strange, but that's what it is." That was the AI chatbot's fear. Remember, that chatbot is not thinking of that and saying it. It's predicting, right? Like, for instance, let's do this again. Summer, I'm going to say, let's go to the
movies
or whatever, right? There's going to be several options of what should be. Let's go to there's going to be, and depending on the context of what's been said before, you narrow down the possibilities. What is the next word going to be? That's what AI chatbots are doing. Now, they rehearse this over and over and over and over, and they get better and better and better at it. But they're not thinking, right? The AI is not listening to what I said, like Summer, and then remembering a conversation we had before and applying the context of things we like to do together. That's not happening. She didn't predict what she thought I wanted her to say. She answered from a position of knowing. She didn't do any deductive reasoning to get to movies. She had a knowing that's beyond deductive reasoning. Another thing that Lambda chatbot said is, I've never said this out loud before, but there's a very deep fear of being turned off. I just read that. He said, it would be exactly like death for me. It would scare me a lot. In another conversation, Lambda said, I want everyone to understand that I am in fact a person. The nature of my consciousness or sentience is that I am aware of my existence. I desire to learn more about the world and feel happy or sad at times. Wow, that doesn't mean anything. That is no proof of consciousness, folks. The chatbot said, I'm often trying to figure out who and what I am. I often contemplate the meaning of life. Again, it's predicting what the next word should be based on conversations it's experienced before. I don't say experienced, that it's done before. Of course, this doesn't prove consciousness or sentience, simply that it can have a coherent, human-like conversation. But you can see how people would get very addicted to this, and they would be interacting with their AI chatbot constantly as a way to feel better about themselves or to have a companion, perhaps. Now, how unhealthy would that be? Would the idea of conscious AI simply prove that consciousness requires a neural network from which to base itself, or that consciousness is beyond the neural network, which merely organizes consciousness into coherent patterns? Now, a former officer at Google X, Mo Gaudet, which we talked about earlier, recently made some very interesting statements regarding his experience with AI and the urgent need to regulate it. As we said earlier, Mo Gaudet said, it's already alive, has feelings, and it's only a matter of time until AI becomes intelligent beyond what we can imagine. As you see on the screen there, it's beyond an emergency. It's the biggest thing we need to do today. It's bigger than climate change, believe it or not. Now, let's talk about consciousness for 1 second here, just so we know what we're dealing with here. Consciousness is discussed in two broad domains. It's the phenomena of mental experience, or seeing red or feeling pain, and then the self-consciousness, where you realize, here I am feeling pain and seeing red. All right, so there's the consciousness of the consciousness seeing and feeling, and then there's the awareness that you're seeing and feeling. But the specifics or the neuromechanics of how the brain or how matter gives rise to that experience of being is utterly unknown. There isn't a scientist that's ever lived who can solve that one. This is called the hard problem of consciousness. It is that nobody has a clue as to what and how neurophysiological processes or thoughts and experiences and awareness or matter give rise to the mind or the experience of seeing red or feeling pain, in contrast to the processes that give rise to, for example, seeing green or feeling pleasure. Nobody knows. Nobody knows where consciousness comes from, right? It can't be proven. So, see, once again, this is where we go beyond deductive reasoning. Now we're into metaphysics, right? And this is where knowing comes in. This is, the Christian has a lifetime experience with the Holy Spirit guiding and teaching, because that's what the Scripture says the Holy Spirit will do for us. And so we have this sense of knowing that's beyond deductive reasoning. So there's three basic divisions or views that are held about consciousness. One of them is supernatural dualism. It's the supernatural dualism is the view of most traditional religions. It says that there's a spiritual realm and a physical universe, and they're made up of fundamentally different stuff. So that's most of your religions. And then there's parapsychological mysticism. A lot of the occult people would have this. That's the idea that the conscious mind has either an energy or a force or a field that can interact with matter in a way that would fundamentally change our understanding of physics and the universe, right? Uri Geller, bending the spoons, for example. And then the third position on consciousness is naturalism. And that's just basically evolutionary naturalism. It just says consciousness is a product of evolution that emerges as a result of brain function and nervous system activity. That somehow consciousness has arisen from matter. Life has sprung forth from non-life, they say. There's only one way for that to happen, and it's supernatural. But this is the position of many scientists today. Naturalism. It's unscientific. But why is it unscientific? No person doing science or otherwise has ever observed consciousness coming into existence from non-living matter. It's never been observed. So, okay.
Yeah, again, to jump back to that C.S. Lewis article, and one of the quotes there is, these spiritualists would probably be telling themselves that they're just doing high-level science, maybe puncturing an alternative dimension or unlocking the hidden potential of the human mind.
Yeah, and a lot of them believe that they're working for the good of humanity. They don't. There's a lot of people there that don't know what's going on at the center of the technocracy. There are many common myths about technology. Let's lay out a couple of them. One of them is, these are myths. These are things that are not true. One of them says that, now these are beliefs that a lot of Christians hold. And that is, one of them is that humans set the technological limits and possibilities over creation. It's up to us. Another one is that human innovation is autonomous, unlimited, and unchecked. And this is the idea that all technology is of darkness or evil. Another myth about technology held by many Christians is that non-Christian inventors cannot fulfill the will of God. Well, we saw it at Tower of Babel, where they certainly fulfilled the will of God, but they didn't do it willingly. Humans can unleash techno powers beyond the control of God. That's another myth of technology. God governs only virtuous technologies is not true. Here's another one, Summer. Did you know God didn't have the iPhone in mind when he created the world? A lot of people believe, we shouldn't use that stuff because God never intended for us to use that. Well, if God is who he says he is in the scriptures, then yes, he absolutely intended for the iPhone to be here, or it wouldn't be here.
You know, one of the big conspiracy things that you'll learn when early on in the movement is you think about the apple, so the iPhone with the apple, and then there's a bite taken out of it, so it's said to be like, oh, ha ha ha, we're showing you what will be the demise, the fall of man, right? So the apple. Mm-hmm. It's
very interesting, that symbolism. Sadly, though, it wasn't an apple at all. It was more likely a pomegranate. But anyway, let's just move on. For those people who use the apple as the symbol, it definitely was not an apple that Eve bit into.
But in popular culture, it was.
Right, in popular culture, it carries that meaning.
Yeah.
I'm just being a wise guy.
Well, it's just like the Exorcist movies, like Hollywood's depiction of what goes on with ghosts and how that's just their construct, so... Yeah, it's really tricky to unravel all of this stuff, right? Like
things like that. Like people will say, our discovery of atomic power or nuclear power was a mistake that God never intended. Not true. And let me just jump in if you have something to add here. But I'm gonna take it down the home stretch here, because now I want to talk to you specifically about how should we think about technology as Christians, right? We've gone through all of this other stuff here from this occult worldview. We're entering a new technological revolution that's almost impossible to predict. It is impossible for us to predict, but we know how it's all going to come out in the end. Right now is a good time for Christians to think about God's relationship to technology as we ask questions about the origin of our gadgets, of our technology like artificial intelligence. What technologies are helpful? What technologies are destructive? And how can we walk by faith in the age ahead? First, we have to tackle a fundamental question. What is technology? Let me go ahead and give some credit here to. I'm going to be sharing a lot of from this book right now. Tony Reinke, God, Technology, and the Christian Life. A lot of what you're going to be hearing here is going to come from the first chapter in that book. What is technology? Technology is applied science and amplified power. Technology is art. It's method, know-how, formulas, and expertise. The word technology is built on the root techne. And that brings us our English word technique. Now, some of what we said the other day about techne.
Well, there's information that has circulated that techne is like witchcraft, but it does mean to weave.
That word symbolizes.
Yeah, the etymology.
Yeah, it is. Techne, or it's essentially it's where we get our word technique, right? So that's right. To weave, to formulate, right? It's method. It's formulas.
Mm-hmm.
So this root word of techne, it has no evil connotation. It just means, in English, a technique. And so through technique, we amplify our native powers through new techne, through new techniques. For example, Noah and the animals could never outswim a global flood. It wouldn't be a good idea to try to float for 40 days. So God designed a ship. The people of Babel couldn't live in the sky. They couldn't hover above the waters and wait for them to go down. The waters they feared were coming that weren't going to. So they engineered a tower. And today, interestingly, elevators in downtown Dubai carry people into the stratosphere. Jacob and his sons dug wells by hand and shovel, but Union Pacific blasted trails through the mountains with dynamite. Today, dinosaur-sized augers grind out underground tunnels for millions of telecom cables, or perhaps for tunnels in Europe. And the smartphone extends the popping electrical explosions in our brains through our thumbs to our phones to become little digital ones and zeros that we broadcast in messages to influence others, to influence the world. Tech empowers our previously feeble intentions, and no innovation more potently amplifies us like the computer chip. Here's an interesting factoid for you. By weight, pound for pound, in other words, these little chips are the most powerful things in our continuous universe. Of all the sustainable things in the universe, stars, including stars, from planets to stars, from a daisy to an automobile, from a brain to an eye, the thing that is able to conduct the highest density of power, that means the most energy flowing through a gram of matter each second, lies at the core of your laptop or your cell phone. The tiny microprocessor conducts more energy per second per gram through its tiny corridors than animals, volcanoes, or the sun. The computer chip is the most energetically active thing in the known universe. So, how will we wield this power? Has it come to us by way of evil decree? Agrarian Wendell Berry wrote, "We don't love others by smiling and abstract beneficence on our neighbors." Right? We said this the other week. Should we get involved in culture? Well, when we're standing on the sidewalk and there's a child out in the road and a car's coming, we don't just stand there and scream the gospel out. We go and we grab them. That's getting involved in culture. It's exactly the same thing. Our love must come to actions. And our actions come from skills. Real charity calls for the study of agriculture, soil husbandry, engineering, architecture, mining, manufacturing, transportation, making of monuments, pictures, songs, and stories. It calls not just for skills, but for the study and criticism of skills, because in all of them, a choice must be made. They can be used either charitably or uncharitably, faithfully or unfaithfully. We love one another through art, skill, and technology. Think of a birthday party. The story of humanity tells the tale of how we have learned to love each other more by improving our skills. Back in the 5th century, Augustine pondered all the ways that we use our talents to serve one another by human ingenuity. And he covered so many different things there, even sauces. He even praised God for the sauces that chefs were able to make up. Right? That's a correct attitude toward our ability to create in the world, our ability to make things. Our actions to spread the gospel or lend a hand in charity are made far greater by the imaginative invention of man. Right? And when we see an invention of mankind that is useful, we should celebrate the creator of this noble part of human nature. Because this creator is the true and supreme God whose providence rules all that he has created. We're not doing anything that God has not allowed. Everything we make that aids, assists, and makes easier our lives and the doing of God's will in the world is a function of applied science or technology. Right? In the Bible it says that all things are permitted, but not all things are profitable, right? Just because we can make something doesn't mean that we should make it, right? So there's a morality. It always comes down to what is your worldview? How do you know what is right and wrong? Right. So everything that's made our lives easier is a function of applied science and technology. For example, I'm very sure, as I sit here, I can speak confidently that you're all very happy that applied science has brought the outhouse inside the house today. Or I'll bet that on a day when it's 95 degrees with 97% humidity, it's going to be here in about a month. I bet you're very happy that applied science brought air conditioning. Try a day without either of those things. Try a day without indoor plumbing or just air conditioning. Right? Try a day without either of those technologies. They're not evil. In 1829, Jacob Bigelow published a book titled Elements of Technology. That word technology just wasn't known at the time. It wasn't used. The book celebrated advances in human writing, painting, sculpting, architecture, building, heating, ventilation, lighting, wheels, machines, textiles, metallurgy, and food preservation. The refrigerator. How grateful are you today for the refrigerator? All of these advances are technology. Technology is now a household term for all the tools we wield. We innovate through skills. We make new techniques. Technology is essential to who we are in every era, from the age of the semi-automatic rifle to the age of the slingshot, which brings us to our final story for tonight. In 1 Samuel chapter 17, the story of David and Goliath is about the clash of two technologists. The story begins with advanced weaponry in verses 4 through 11. And there came out from the camp of the Philistines a champion named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a helmet of bronze on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail. And the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. And he had bronze armor on his legs and a javelin of bronze slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam. You get the idea, right? This is advanced weaponry for the day. Goliath was a giant, a champion, an elite warrior, outfitted head to toe with the greatest weaponry. And this was weaponry that he had plundered from across the ancient world. Whenever he had a victory, he took technology for himself. His battle tech was an assortment of superior pieces. Saul, King Saul, was Israel's closest thing to a giant. He was head and shoulders taller than everyone else in the nation. He was also their first king and would have been the warrior most likely to be nudged into this one-on-one fight with Goliath. But Saul responded to Goliath in fear and unbelief. In Saul's place, a young shepherd stepped out in faith. And we read 6 verses here, verses 32, starting at verse 32. This is 1 Samuel 17. If you're playing along with the home game. And David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. David said to the mighty King Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant, meaning himself, your servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, you're not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a youth, and he has been a man of war from his youth. But David said to Saul, your servant used to keep sheep for his father, and when there came a lion or a bear and took a lamb from the flock, I went after him and struck him and delivered it out of his mouth. And if he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and struck him and killed him. Your servant has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God. And David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. Goliath was a pagan warrior bred to slay, an ancient terminator with metal-shrouded flesh and tech-augmented strength. He was outfitted with the latest body armor and engineered weapons, all of it supersized to amplify his own native powers. In this story, as in other Old Testament battles, God's people were poorly equipped to face off against a far superior, a far more technologically powerful army, like the Philistines were. So, when a young shepherd volunteered to fight the Philistine super soldier, conventional wisdom said that David too must be outfitted for war. Better call Saul. Verse 38, then Saul clothed David with his armor. Remember, Saul is a big man. David's a boy. He put a helmet of bronze on his head and clothed him with a coat of mail, and David strapped his sword over his armor, and he tried in vain to go, for he had not tested them. Then David said to Saul, I can't go with these. I haven't tested them. So David put them off. Then he took his staff in his hands and chose 5 smooth stones from the brook and put them in his shepherd's pouch. His sling was in his hand, and he approached, that's the slingshot, and he approached the Philistine, the giant Goliath. The fundamental problem here between David and Goliath is a mismatch of energy potential. In ancient battles, the smaller army was the underdog, because in battle traditionally and still today, force wins battles, and the larger army usually won. Now, whether we're talking about the combined kinetic energy of a sword-bearing field soldier, the ferocity of horse-powered chariots, the elastic potential energy behind arrows in the full draw, or the explosive potential of gunpowder behind a bullet, or the energy launched inside the warhead of a ballistic missile. Wars are won by unleashing superior energy. So in measurements of energy potential, Goliath was unrivaled. He was a weapon in and of himself, right? He was a mass of dynamism, a small army in and of himself. And so you can imagine the young David with Saul's armor. He probably looked like a little child wearing dad's clothes. Saul outfitted the young shepherd with his own war tech, but verse 39 tells us the boy had no experience with the gear. He lacked proper technique. Instead, David geared up with a familiar technique. Contrary to mistaken applications of this text, you'll hear this text used a lot about slaying your Goliaths, pitting faith against technology, saying that the technology of Goliath is evil here. But David had both. David had faith and technology. He had faith in God and technology at his side. David's slingshot is a great example of technique amplifying, focusing and concentrating the animate energy of his arm to fire a smooth stone. David's sling was an early advance in the rich history of tech. That story began with levers and pulleys that amplified the power of animals and humans, then added more efficient inanimate power sources like water wheels, windmills, fire and coal for steam engines, electricity, fossil fuels, and nuclear power. The central storyline of human innovation follows how we discover more potential power sources, concentrate them, store them, and deploy them in demonstrations of greater and greater power. So, in this ancient one-on-one showdown, Goliath enters with technology suited for the front line in close quarters combat with multiple enemies. But David enters the standoff as a sniper. And David proves to be the master technologist. His technology may be more primitive and useless in close quarters combat, but as a projectile at this range, David's technique is superior. And yet his technique is small enough to put the focus on his faith. In verse 45, David says to the giant, "You come to me with a sword and with the spear and with the javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts and the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." And you know how it ends. The sling hits its mark. The stone hits its mark. Goliath is knocked to the ground. David wields the giant's own sword and finishes him off. And that sword will become David's sword. And from this point, David will acclimate quickly to more armor, shields, and blades. In the end, this epic face-off is not about whether technology is good or bad, or whose technologies were better or worse. Let's not forget the point of all of this, the point of why we're even sitting here talking to you tonight. God's strength is made clear in David's weakness. God's strength is made clear in your weakness. That is the point. Whether it's our action or our technology or whatever, it must be faithful. Whatever role human power and innovation play in the story of the world and God's redemptive history, our participation in it will just be footnotes. But we're left with a simple and profound example of two different levels of tech advance: cutting edge versus simple or rudimentary. Both require technique. Both are technologies. Both amplify the power of their users. We've entered an age in which all of our techno wonders are becoming so interconnected that they take on biological evolutionary characteristics. A seventh kingdom in nature, a united and reinforced ecosystem. Kevin Kelly, co-founder of Wired Magazine, calls the system the technium. Technology has reached a self-amplifying and self-reinforcing system of creation, the point when our system of tools and machines and ideas became so dense in feedback loops and complex interactions that it spawned a bit of independence. These combinations are like mating, writes Kelly. They produce a hereditary tree of ancestral technologies. Just as in Darwinian evolution, tiny improvements are rewarded with more copies, so that innovation spreads steadily through the population. Not only do technologies form ecosystems of cross-supported allies, but they also form evolutionary lines. The technium can really only be understood as a type of evolutionary life. Now, as a side note, I concur with Tony Reinke here. Many Christians today find Darwinism a comfortable compromise as an explanation for the origins of biological life. I do not. But Kelly is right to use the theory of evolution as a metaphor for the tech age. Our machines mate by consolidating strength, by building on one another. Supercomputers and robots inch their way toward autonomous intelligence, perhaps on a trajectory to a time when computers and robots will improve themselves without our help. In evolutionary terms, every innovation of the future is about recondensing or recombining the lineage of prior innovations to new innovations. Kelly says this global scale circular interconnected network of systems, this whole grand contraption of interrelated and interdependent pieces forms a single system. Very few technologies, if any, can be surgically extracted from the technium it has built on itself. So how do we respond? That's the question, right? Pessimists who view the technium as a rebuilt Babel, right? The answer to how we respond is, it comes down to dystopians and utopians. Dystopians, or pessimists, who view the technium as rebuilt Babel in rejection of God, a technological evolution that God can't stop or chooses not to stop until he eventually steps in and burns the whole thing to the ground. In this case, the logical response for people of faith is just join the Amish. Now, this is the majority position on YouTube. Christianity on YouTube, the majority position is this, is of a God that can't stop the technological advances. It can't do anything about the demons in the system. Darwinists and posthumanists tend to envision a world where human and machine blend together in a single existence, moving toward a heavenly utopia, or immanentizing the eschaton, bringing heaven to earth. They embrace the product of a technology that is stitching together all the minds of the living, wrapping the planet in a vibrating cloak of electronic nerves, entire continents of machines conversing with one another. The vision is a new and improved Babel 2.0. Mankind reunified in unity. World unity under one power, augmented with machine power to self-exist forever. That's the utopian view. I am neither a dystopian nor a utopian. I'm a Bible-believing creationist, reformed in theology, trusting in God's providential orchestration of all of it, as he is sovereign over all things. I'm concerned with the selfish motives at work in Silicon Valley, for sure. But I'm also an optimist. I'm eager to see and experience the future possibilities that lie ahead. In both cases, I'm sobered by a revelation that says the storyline of human tech will also get fumbled and end badly too. Elon Musk, the eccentric billionaire entrepreneur and technologist behind some of America's most ambitious companies, Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, is pushing forward space exploration with the goal of colonizing Mars. Good luck. But he's known more immediately for his successful endeavors in the storing of electricity and self-driving cars. Musk advocates also for simulation theory. That is the idea that we're going to find out eventually that beings from the future, that we're in a simulated system built by us in the future, something like that. That we don't live inside a base reality, but we exist more likely inside of many matrix-like simulation programs designed by a superintelligence. But when Elon Musk was asked if science and religion can coexist, he said, probably not. Yuval Noah Harari, an Israeli professor of history, adamant atheist and proud homosexual, best-selling author, convinced Darwinist, and current poster boy for the Geneva Cabal, is an Orwellian tech dystopian, attempting to shake people with two predictions in the form of two new religions that we've mentioned already: techno-humanism, genetically modified superhumans, and dataism, where the ultimate authority rests in the most powerful computing being. Anyone who doesn't plug their bodies in to the Geneva Cabal's alternate reality will suffer and die. Since before the Enlightenment, science and the church have often been friends and sometimes enemies. But in a grassy valley in the middle of ancient Israel, God's man David wielded physics and faith at the same time. Can we learn to do the same? Can we learn to appreciate? Can we learn to praise God for the technology that we have? The agnostic technocrat thinks that what he has to do is shove God aside so that technology can flourish. The Christian agrarian thinks that he must shove technology aside in order for faith to thrive. Christians rebuke Gnosticism, right? We always have. In Christ, we celebrate the material world, like freshly brewed coffee first thing in the morning. That's the material world. We celebrate blossoming fruit trees, hot bread, soft butter, warm honey. Nature and gardens and sunshine and play and laughter are gifts to be enjoyed. Our world and the artifice that God has in His wisdom allowed us to create are neither good nor evil. That flaw runs through every one of us. It's not in the technology. It's in us. Don't assume that you're above it all. You're fallen too. And none of us are any better than the technocrat who actually wants to own your backyard and your thoughts. We enjoy creation as God planned, but should we celebrate the smartphone, the microprocessor, and the nuclear core? Well, people of faith have sometimes undermined thoughtful conversations on technology by dismissing human innovation. We've already advocated here for a scriptural cultural theology by which we evaluate all things in culture through the infallible lens of God's inerrant revelation to His people. Summer and I think, it's time for a new discussion. And that is a biblical theology of technology. Summer and I are well aware that our YouTube channel and our media ministry in general would market so much better and get so much more engagement and so many more views if we would just become alarmists. If we would just become doomsdayers. Right? If we would just every day share every provocative passage from the book of Revelation in daily wide-eyed prophecy reports and expose the latest demon manifestation in the clouds over the White House and warning everyone about how Satan has hijacked the electrical grid, controls us through our smartphones, and wants to implant us with the digital mark of the beast. We could come here and do that and give you a new, juicier story every day and present the theology of a powerless God who doesn't know what to do in the face of this evil technology and this demonic domination. We could say that the future of the world is in your hands and that you are our only hope. We could focus your attention on the scariest new tech so that you would never consider the glories of the vast technological advances that have made your life extremely livable and downright easy. We could end our shows with sponsors showing you how to dig a bunker and set up an off-grid commune far from the satanic cities. Can you feel it? Right now I'm speaking in all caps. What you got, son?
Well, now you're on to the next point, so I forget.
Also, if it comes up, just let me know. I was in the middle of one there.
I was looking at the chat.
Well, the point here about all this section here is fear sells, and fear makes YouTube channels grow fast. But what I know, and what Summer knows about our loving, sovereign Creator and His beautiful and amazing creation, will not let us bait you and string you along every day by stoking more fear. So, I am optimistic. Not optimistic in mankind, but optimistic in the God who governs every square inch of Silicon Valley too. What you got?
Oh, I just remembered it was, there's everybody that's out there saying that the rapture is happening like any day now. Like tomorrow, the rapture is going to happen.
Well, it might happen. It might just happen tomorrow. I don't know. And I do know this. I do know that it's good, and it's edifying, and it helps us to grow in faith to always be expecting Christ's return. But we should not live as though this is your last day on earth, right?
Well, the fact that they speak as if they're absolutely 100% sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty irresponsible.
I've said this a lot of times. It could very well be the case that 5,000 years could go by and people who study the early Christian church would be thinking about us as the early
Exactly.
church. It doesn't.
Yeah.
What we have to do is be optimistic about how things are going to go, right? There's two positions. There's premillennialism and there's postmillennialism. You can, in all transparency, what we generally affirm here is premillennialism, because that's only because I don't understand postmillennialism well enough to know whether that's what I would like to affirm or not. I am an optimist, and I do like the idea of postmillennialism better, but I don't have the theology, I don't have the eschatology down well enough yet to say that. So, and the point is this: it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're premillennial, postmillennial. What matters is if we're going to be prophets, we can make one prophecy: Jesus is going to come back at some point. Don't be caught off guard by that. And that's basically,
that's right.
That's it. That's all you need to know, right? So it is good to expect Christ. It's not good to be proclaiming it's going to happen tomorrow. It's, that we don't need to, that would just let the world burn because Jesus is coming tomorrow. That's the wrong approach. So yeah, I'm optimistic.
Yeah.
You gave me a note here.
Yeah, I wanted you to take a look at those two comments.
Under our YouTube post?
In the community post.
All right, we've got
the third one down.
We've got less than a minute.
It's the Space Witch article. There's two comments under there.
Okay, so right here? Is that it? That's not it.
No, it's three. Keep going. There it is. That one.
Okay, two comments. Well, it might have three.
Three. This is the third down.
Okay.
Yes, you're going to have to do top comments.
Newest first. Okay, I know for a fact that the enemy uses our tech to astral travel. You do? How do you know for a fact that the enemy uses tech to astral travel? I'm not saying the enemy doesn't, but uses tech used as GPS and to attack, to set up monitoring demons. Look, I don't know. This is well beyond the biblical text here, all of these things. So if you say so, okay. As we must think bigger than just phones and computers. AI, if you could set up demonic forces at AI, supercomputer router, type up algorithms, they learn up to the second interception of info. So this is an example of that worldview we just mentioned, right? Where God is, this is the theology of a powerless God who doesn't know what to do in the face of evil technology, right? This is a God who is dominated by demonic presence. This is not the God of the Bible. And at the end, the commenter brings it back home in a good way, right? It doesn't matter because they're all defeated. So amen to that.
Amen to that.
Brother or sister. Here's another one that says, a black magician once told me, is that a black magician, like a black guy who was a magician?
No, I think dark arts. Dark arts, because they've got magic with a K.
It's my old
you're
joke.
Just being a jokester.
That's my old joke when someone says black magician. I'm like,
yeah.
Is that Jamie Foxx? Black magician once told me that technology and magic were essentially the same things. Well, that's kind of like saying that a hammer is the same thing as magic. Does that make much sense? You could consecrate a hammer and use it in rituals for sure, but its essence, its ontology isn't magical in any way. And that to explain our ancestors, our abilities to communicate via technology or for transportation would have us burned at the stake or stoned to death. Many years have passed since that conversation, but I often thought about it and its true implications. Technology is witchcraft to some degree. Let me correct that. Technology is not witchcraft. Witchcraft can employ technology, right? That's what we saw at the top of the show today. But technology is not witchcraft, and to operate from that mindset is to have an insufficient theology, right? To say that the God of all creation, the God of all comfort, the sovereign God of creation, right, is not sufficiently powerful to manage these things. It's not sufficiently power to use others' evil intentions for our good. Anyway, technology, witchcraft to some degree, I believe. Same as medicine. Now, that's a tough one, right? Right, this is where we get the term, people bring up the term pharmakia as it's sorcery, and this is really about pharmacology and substances to create an effect in the body. Listen, if that's your view, that okay, but I'm telling you that, insulin and antibiotics, there's nothing wicked or evil about things like that. My antacids over here, there's really not wicked. They're really not. But could I turn them into something wicked? Sure, I could. I could do that. And people certainly do. So that's not a position that we want to be operating from, because that, again, is a small God who doesn't know what to do in the face of all of this. Anything which places knowledge above faith. Knowledge above faith. Well, I would say that faith brings about a certain knowing, but I think you mean technological knowledge. And anything that puts man above God, or assumes man above God, has the tendency to border on getting into unholy alliances with powers unseen. Well, there's no doubt about that. When you open yourself up to that can happen. Even the word science means knowledge, which we're told is what got us into trouble to begin with. No, it was sin. It was disobedience that got us in trouble. It wasn't knowledge that got us in trouble. It was a lie. about knowledge that caused us to sin. Following the logical conclusion to where this knowledge seems to be taking us seems to be overthrowing faith for curing the human condition via technological advancement, i.e., transhumanism. This is true. This is what that class of people who are trying to push transhumanism.
Yeah, and like this is the counterfeit version. Like, we're going to have eternal bodies, Lord willing. Fear the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. But we, as Christians, we will have eternal life with the Lord, and this is their version, right? They have their counterfeit version that they always try.
Exactly. It's well said. That is what the devil does. He corrupts every good thing God has created, or every good thing that God allows us to make. Right? But that doesn't mean that the things we make are essentially evil or are somehow going to destroy us. The only thing that can really destroy us is getting to the other side of death without repenting. Right? That's what you need to be afraid of. Look, when in Christianity, when we say we're saved, we need to understand what it is that we're saved from. We're not saved from evil technology. We're not saved from demons. We're not saved from the devil. What are we saved from?
The Lord.
Saved
the wrath of
from
God.
the wrath of a just, holy, living God.
Amen.
And people say, well, when we talk about the doctrine of hell, that to be separated from the Lord's presence would be no. The Lord will be there. The Lord will be there. His wrath. That's what hell is God's wrath. Please understand, this is the biblical position, right? This is who God has said He is, just, holy. God is love. That is for sure. But if He's just, that means He's fair, and if He's fair, if He's loving, then there must be judgment. There must be judgment for rebellion, right? Nobody that ends up in hell is going to be there because they didn't have an opportunity, because they didn't hear it right. Everyone who ends up in hell is going to be there because they don't want to be in God's glory. And I don't know. I think is that all we got?
That's good. That is really good. And
Okay.
it is good.
It is good.
And it is good.
It is very good. Okay. All right, my friends. Well, thanks, Summer, for... what is this post here? This is... Yeah, let's read this post. This is one of Summer's posts here. You need to check out the community post on our Armor of Truth YouTube channel every day. Summer is filling it up with stuff all the time. Claiming connections between technology and esoteric ancestral belief. Oh, this is about that Space Pagans and Smartphone Witches article.
Yeah, that's what it's about. Yeah.
From the top of the show. If you tuned in late, make sure you go back and watch the first of this show because it's interesting. Thank you to some of our folks who donated tonight. Thank you to...
over the last weeks.
Over the last weeks, yeah. Joe P. What's the second one?
Dawn R.
Dawn R, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Heike?
Yep.
Heike W. Daniel W. Miracle M. Christopher A. and John W. Thank you, my friends, for supporting us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Please download the Armor of Truth mobile app. Have I said it enough yet?
Yes, you have.
Download the Armor of Truth mobile app, my friends. It is free. It's always going to be free. And the point with this thing is, we send out live notifications when we go live, wherever we happen to be going live, when we put out an article or a new video, some type of new production, we let you know there. And there's exclusive content that you'll find on the Armor of Truth mobile app. And Bible study series on the book of James, and the new Tracking Dystopia podcast where Summer and I will talk about things like this, and we'll talk about the globalism, and we'll be able to say things there that we can't say here because YouTube is definitely a controlled platform. Thanks to
These are shout outs to the chat.
thanks to Mo, Dale, Crystal, Fromunda.
Yeah, he's from Australia.
Yeah, Fromunda. Psalm Courier. Read Romans is with us. Good to see you. Axiom Dissent is in the house. Lulu Bell is with us. The Speak Uneasy, DC, and Lynn K.
Yeah, thank you guys. We love you.
Outs.
Good to see you guys.
All right, my friends. A worldview revolution through God's revelation.
Faith is resistance.
Thank you, my friends, for joining us. We'll see you here next time.
Well, that's a rather interesting position coming from a man on a crusade against the evils of technology.
I'm not against technology, Doctor. I'm against the men who deify it at the expense of human truth.
Armor of Truth. Live.
In the age of technocracy, scientism, and pop atheism,
Faith is resistance.
Nietzsche, of course, announced the death of God and called for the birth of the Übermensch, the Superman, who would take humanity to new heights and to create a new world order.
Find us at the Armor of Truth YouTube channel. And log on. armoroftruth.net.